Okay, so we're here to talk about e-voting, the subject of this get-together here online. I'm joined by Areeq Chowdhury, the founder of WebRoots Democracy, also Emma Mulqueeny, who's from the Speakers Commission on Digital Democracy, and Marju Tamp, who is from the Estonia National Youth Council, where currently they do have e-voting, and it's gone very well, according to many people there. Can I start with you, Areeq? I just wanted to get your views on why you think, because your pressure group works towards having e-voting, why you think it's such a good idea.
Well, the way people are living their lives now is everything has become more and more digitalized. And if we look at the 21st century voter turnouts compared to the 20th century post-war turnouts, it's decreased by, I think, 12 or 13 percentage points. And in that same time, everything we do now has become more online. Half of us are banking online. Three quarters of us shop online. We book our GP appointments online. And the worry is, if we don't adopt online voting, how are we going to future-proof elections in the future? Because everything will become more online. Even the older generation now, year on year, more people are coming onto the internet, using it every day, using it on the go, and that will only increase in the future. And so, in our view, it's a almost common sense next step, really, to improving our democracy and modernizing it.
Emma, you're involved in looking to the future and how the internet can help with making things run smoother in Parliament. Does that involve e-voting? Do you think that's a good idea?
Yes, I think it's a part of a package of solutions. I think the Commission is kind of looking at how the digital renaissance really affects democracy. So it goes beyond how can we kind of just engage with people online, and actually is looking at the kind of changing behaviour and changing expectations, I think, of people that kind of live here and the kind of closeness that they would expect to have with their representatives. So it kind of covers a broad, well, basically everything. And so, yes, e-voting definitely kind of features in there, but I think, I think to just kind of, if the Commission's recommendation just came out kind of going, yes, e-voting, I think that we still have all manner of other things that we need to kind of sort out at the same time.
Well, I'll come back to you on that, but Marju Tamp, you in Estonia have experienced this, and do you find on the whole it's been a positive experience?
Oh, it's been a very positive experience for me, for my friends, and I've been working with the youth quite some time now. And as I said, it's been involved with 2 different projects that I'm in, and it shows that they're more willing to continue with e-voting. But it shows also that even the older generation actually accepts this e-voting even more happy than youth, because the youth, you need physically you need this ID card to e-vote, and you also need these PIN codes. But the youth, they use this ID card maybe to travel or to identity card, so they may not have the PIN codes. So that's why the older generation that signs important documents with the ID card, they have all these PIN codes, and they know more often how to use ID card properly and e-vote as well. Or nevertheless, but the younger generation don't know that much. So that's why all these different projects are really necessary to show them that it's actually very easy, and they're really open-minded about it.
A group of IT experts looked at the Estonia system and from America, well, globally, and said that there might be flaws in it and that it was open to possible election rigging. I don't know if you saw that report, but is that something that the Estonians have been concerned about?
Well, it's always a concern about when there's election coming. There's always a lot of critics and a lot of skeptics coming up with different stories, but so far it's been flawless. And but most of the time it's more politically what they critic about, but it's never about the system actually. And we've done it 7 times. We started since 2005, and it's been working so far. And when we started, the e-voters were like, from all of the voters, with 1.9%, and now it's grown to 32%, which is actually showing that it's growing all the time.
Emma, I want to take that point to you about the security. Presumably that is something that you're looking at when it comes to implementing something like this here in the UK. And what the experts were saying about the Estonian system is that even on your personal computer, hackers could install malware to protect potentially change your vote, and the server itself that was compiling the votes was potentially open to being infiltrated, and again votes disappeared or changed on the server. They say that that was possible, and that kind of thing could happen, and I think they concluded that no country could do e-voting securely. That was according to that report. Do you think we're anywhere near close to having a secure system?
No, I don't think we are, and I think that's why it's the kind of primary concern, that and influence. But I think what we need to do is kind of look at ways that people can e-vote that isn't a sort of bespoke system that is produced by government, because obviously those IT projects are famously criminally expensive and also kind of not particularly awesome at being secure. So you know, looking at how we can use infrastructure that's already there that people are already using. So, you know, such as Facebook and Twitter and all of those kind of things and so on and so forth. But not necessarily those, but actually looking at the things where people are already engaging and looking at how you can take that one step further towards e-voting by getting people to, I don't know, either actually vote or you know, register their thoughts. So you would envisage the sort of the first voting potential in this country would be through social media outlets that we already use? Through existing platforms would be the best step forward, rather than waiting 10 years to have a super expensive failed IT project. That
I don't think it'll be.
Areeq, what do you think of that, Areeq?
I've been asked this question a lot about security. I actually think it's almost a false question, because we look at the internet as though it should be 100% secure, when in reality, nothing in the world is 100% secure. 10 Downing Street isn't 100% secure. Parliament isn't 100% secure. Everything will have flaws. The problem is, can you secure it and mitigate those risks, which you can in online voting, as has been shown in Estonia. There are lots of systems put in place, in particular with being peer pressured. So, for example, as I understand it, in Estonia, they have a online voting period before the election day, where you can vote multiple times to discount any previous vote, and your last vote counts. And if even your last vote is pressured, you can go and vote in person. Am I correct?
Yes,
so
yes,
I don't think you can actually secure anything. So, but we look at the internet in a way that it should be secure 100%. And it would be a criminal act if someone did commit fraud, and with every criminal act,
of course, but criminals are becoming ever more sophisticated. They've got better techniques of doing these kind of things, and it would be potentially criminals or people with criminal mind who wanted to influence the election who would be up for doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, we'd have to treat it like you would with any other crime, really, which is to secure it as much as we can, which it can be done, as has been shown in examples across the world, and then improve the detection of tampering. There's computer scientists at the University of Birmingham who are specifically looking at how we can detect interruption with the system, and we have to prosecute and have a real and hard punishment for electoral fraud, especially if it was a mass scale, for example.
Which we do, obviously, with postal voting and things like that. But the other problem, of course, is there's no paper trail. In the internet, you're sort of relying on these digital servers to be accurate, and if they're not, how do you work out whether they are or not? I put that back to you, Areeq.
Well, I do think that risk still exists, really, in the current system. We do put a lot of trust into the people who run the current system. When there are allegations of fraud in the current system, they are often examples of people putting their own campaigners in the count room, for example, or stuffing ballot boxes or taking postal votes. Those risks do exist. However, there was an Electoral Commission report that also stated with postal voting that there are risks. However, the benefits of reaching out to more people and more people engaging in the process, because the real risk is that in the future we're going to have less legitimate governments, turnouts decreasing. Just the other week, there was only 10% who voted in the Birmingham PCC by-election, and some was only 1% voted. That is a bigger risk, in my view, and I think that is what is reflected in the Electoral Commission report that they did when they looked at fraud in the postal voting system.
Marju, sorry, go on, Emma, come in on that.
I just jump in. I mean, actually digital voting is actually far safer. Your footprint is far more easy to trace than it is offline, actually. So it's almost the opposite. It's far easier to trace. It's very difficult to be completely anonymous online, as many people will tell you. But that does bring in the concern. So yes, checks and balances sort of post-voting, which is.
But isn't part of voting to be anonymous?
Yes, it is, exactly. So, but if you're going to query that this thing has actually come in from that person, and then you have to, in your checks and balances, double check that it's come from that server or that ISP that's associated usually with that person. You would be able to.
Yeah, Marju, are you absolutely confident that all the elections in Estonia have been sort of, in terms of the digital voting, uncorrupted?
Well, I've just, as we were looking here now, flaws of the e-voting and the system, actually you can't say that there aren't any flaws in the paper voting. And I was just reading about it that last local elections, there were only one corrupted vote in e-voting, and where when people went paper voting, there was more than 4,000 paper voters, or the voting which were like corrupted or didn't ended in a voting poll correctly, which means that actually voting with the system is shows that there's only one corrupted vote over the 7 times that we.
Yes, so we slightly lost you there, Marju. Just repeat that last point.
That it shows that over the seven times that we've been using e-vote, the system, it's been only once that one vote was corrupted, which means that probably he or she had a dysfunctional chip or dysfunctional ID card, but it hasn't been reported before that there was any corrupted votes.
Okay, let's go. We talked a lot about the security aspect of this. I wanted to just touch on the idea of the fact that this might create sort of 2-tier voters. You know, you've got the people who have access to the internet, who are able to do this, and then you've got people who aren't as technically savvy, and this potential digital divide. I mean, Emma, is that something you've looked at when you've been looking at the internet, as to, in all aspects of government really, this idea that sometimes it can affect some people in a negative way simply because they don't have the opportunities that people who are more online savvy do have?
Yeah, we do. I mean, obviously, throughout the whole of the Commission's work, everything has to be counted by, and how do we address this with the people that don't have access to online stuff. But, you know, working with people like Go On, and it's more about using intermediaries, you know, to kind of, you know, go out there and actually physically engage. So, I mean, this is what I'm saying about, you know, this whole digital democracy discussion is kind of so much wider than just what tools can we use to engage with government. It's kind of how do we actually engage as many people as possible in this. But, you know, it's also kind of, you know, vice versa. If you always focus on the people that have traditionally been offline or are offline and enable that because it's quite difficult to look at the digital solutions, then, you know, you do risk losing the engagement of the young people that Areeq talks about and stands up for, because, you know, unless we really focus on both of those people, which have quite different needs, and, you know, and service the needs of both of those, then, you know, you can't actually say that you're kind of running a fair democracy. So it's kind of, you know, it can never be one completely replaces the other.
Yeah, I mean, Areeq, to you on that issue, do you have any concerns about the people who will be left behind, even young people perhaps who aren't as interested in the internet?
Well, currently the RNS released figures last month which showed 96% of young people use the internet on the go, and the direction of travel is even the older generations are using the internet more now. In 2007, only 9% of over 65s used the internet, and now it's 42%. And as the years go on, we'll all get to that stage. Okay,
but it's how much access you have. So I'll put it to you, for example, that wealthier young people are more likely to have an iPhone. And if voting is through that kind of voting, through a platform that is more advanced, then wealthier people would have more opportunity to vote than poorer people.
Well, we do introduce it, or what we're campaigning for is as an option rather than an overhaul of the entire system. So you could still vote in person and vote by postal vote. But however, I do think government itself has got an ambition to get everyone connected on the internet, and this would fit in quite well with the government's long-term vision of getting a more connected country, everyone having access to the internet, and we will get to a stage where everyone will have access and everyone will be using it. And if we don't invest in online voting now, if we don't start looking at it, we're going to be asking this question in 20 years' time when we're looking at potentially really low turnout.
To you, Marju, briefly, in Estonia, have they looked at this issue of people being left out, that young people perhaps who don't have smartphones haven't voted in the same way that people who have?
Well, of course, we have thought about it, and they have talked about it. But it's we would never lose the paper voting as well. It's just another option, and it shows that it's growing. And last time the vote in European Parliament election, there were like from 96 different countries, Estonians were voting for the European Parliament elections, which shows that this kind of system gives them opportunity to even vote, participate in these elections, even though when they're not in Estonia. And we even make fun of ourselves that we have even internet, even we're in a forest, picking mushrooms or berries. So we even have that. We don't even see ourselves without internet or phones.
Okay, I want to bring this on to, and perhaps it's kind of the final area of debate, really, but one I think is perhaps more important than anything we've talked about, which is that voting, as seen by many people, is something that we do together. It's a civic duty. It's something that brings us together, and there's a process to it that is traditional, that we go to a ballot, and it's worked for many, many years. Why do we need to change the system? And is there a danger that we lose something by making it too easy to vote? I'll start with you on this, Emma, seeing as this is something you've been researching for some time.
Yeah, I mean, actually, engagement across the piece has been falling dramatically, and almost as we kind of move into more of a digital space, so Parliament and government has become more separated from reality. And you see this reflected in people going, I don't feel like I'm represented by people that actually know what my life is like, and they can share those views in their social spaces that are online, and everybody is saying the same thing, and there isn't any voice from Parliament and government in there. So actually the damage that is being done by there not being a kind of look at how we can engage properly in a digital world is actually making it so that the thing that has worked up until we had this option, it's starting to fail, and it will continue to fail. And as I said, there's a lot of the kind of bigger questions about representative democracy, in a digital world, and how that works, and how people want to be represented going forward. And what we're looking at. I suppose
my key question is just because it's there and just because we could do it, is that necessarily the thing to do? Because actually the old system has worked.
It's not just because it's there and just because we do it. It's about how do people who are communicating already, and as Areeq said at the beginning, this is how people operate their lives, how they talk to each other, how they engage with schools and government and health services and stuff like that. This is where they are, and actually, if we are not there, then that is a hole that is left. And so it's just it just makes sense that we need to kind of move engagement with government and Parliament into the digital space. It's just working out how.
I mean, Areeq, I kind of put the same question to you, because some people do see it as important that people make the effort to go down to the ballot box and that they vote together, even though obviously their vote is anonymous, that they're seen to go out and stand and queue and go through the process.
Yeah, this is an important question, because the underlying issue really is that there's been a cultural shift. It's not that going to a polling booth is actually relatively easy. Ticking a box is easy to vote. However, there's been a cultural shift, and if you look in particular at young people, but it will happen to all ages eventually, all becoming more online. Like, for example, smartphones are often becoming an extension of the human body for young people. There's a report that came out recently that showed that people go on their phone before they sleep and when they wake up. And if we don't acknowledge this, so for example, in young people turnout in 16 to 24-year-olds, it was 44% in the last general election.
Yeah.
And there was a survey recently that showed only 12% of young people are going to vote in the next election. I mean, bringing it online won't just make it another option of how to tick a box. It could also inform voters more. 55% of I think the entire population in the UK now read their news online. For example, people are more and more learning things online, engaging online, socializing online. Bringing the vote online won't just create another option. It'll change the experience. Everyone will become more educated. Do people really know what they're voting for when they go down to the polling booth? In the last election, there were thousands of accidentally spoiled ballots. That's people ticking too many candidates, for example. And there's thousands of people to this day do not know that their vote didn't count because they ticked it incorrectly. Whereas an online voting option could actually get around that fault, for example. So there's lots of benefits. So even though, and also we're campaigning for it as an option as well. So people do want to go down to the polling booth, they could, but it would change it in more ways than just another way to tick a box. You'd have more informed voters, more correct votes, more people engaging with the process, because that's how they engage with everything else in their life.
I'll put it to Marju. I mean, you know, when you voted, presumably you did do it as an e-vote, is that right?
Yes.
And did it feel like an occasion? Did it feel, I don't know, like enough of an event that you were actually making an important decision? Or was it just like phoning up and making a decision on who should go through to the next round of X Factor?
No, it felt important, of course. I don't know, I felt kind of even proud of being e-country, because we're really using the e-solutions, and we're open-minded, as I said. And all the state offices are in e-office. We can even text return. We can do it in 5 minutes. You can submit to a school, university. You have to submit to university with your ID card. So I'm really proud of our solutions, and I felt that showing to the youth, working with the youth a lot, it shows them that I trust this system. So I think a lot of them, and it came like a popular that you voted it, and it shows like in the end, it shows like a pop-up that thank you for voting with the e-system, and that's a lot of them put pictures even up. You know, I did it. It only takes like 30 seconds to 1 minute, and it's just so easy. So there's no excuse for people to not vote. That's another side.
Okay, I'm going to end with a question to Emma. Your commission is reporting next year in 2015. Are you going to be recommending that e-voting should happen in the next election?
In the next election?
Yeah.
What, next year?
Yeah, is it possible? Well, you're talking about through social media. I mean, it could happen almost instantly, couldn't it?
No, definitely not. No, definitely not in the next election.
Well, what about the one after that?
Possibly. I mean, I know that the Speaker is keen, and you know the commissioners are keen, as a part of a suite of things that need to happen. And when we work out what happens in what order, in order to make sure that it has the right impact and reaches as many people as possible, then it will happen. It's just a question of when, really.
That is the question of when, and I just wondered if you could give me a kind of your guesstimate as to when you think that might be.
Well, I would guess in the next 5 years. I would hope in the next 5 years.
Emma, Areeq, and Marju, thank you very much for talking to us today. We've certainly covered quite a lot of ground there, and it does seem that e-voting will be a lot more than just a discussion in years to come. It could be the way that we are choosing our next leaders.
Yep.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye.
And the stop broadcast button at the...
Oh, stop broadcast. Yeah.